I am now joined by Liam Horsley, one of the biggest Dallas Mavericks fans I know, based in the great country of England as well, like me. And Liam has come on to talk to us a little bit about the Hornets' newest addition, Josh Green. Liam has probably watched Green as closely as anyone over the last couple of years. And as soon as he got traded here, there's no one else who's better to come on the podcast and give us some insight. You know, you're gonna be able to Google his stats and look at his highlights, but Liam has followed him closely. So Liam, thank you for coming on and joining us.
No worries. Thanks for having me, mate. Last time we spoke was more about you making me money on NBA draft props. So I'm looking forward to a different chat, talking about Josh Green now. I think he'll fit well with your team. But yeah, pleasure to be on. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and it was something I did draft props again this year. I did fine. I made money. The ones that killed me, Dalton Connect not going top 10 and Johnny Furphy dropping out the first round. I had such good odds on both of those things, and hence why I put sizable amounts on. And both seem so unlikely going into the draft. So those ones hurt me. But we're here to talk about Josh Green. I guess, what were your first impressions when you saw the deal come across, you know, that the Hornets were acquiring Josh Green for 2 second-round picks? You know, he's got 3 years, essentially 12, 13 million per year for the next 3 years. Kind of, do you view Josh Green as a positive asset on that contract?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I quite like Josh Green, especially at the money. I think if you look at the contracts we've seen kind of doled out in the last week or so, I think Josh Green, his age, his profile, we'll talk a little bit maybe how his career's gone and how I see a pretty steady improvement for him as a player. Obviously, eventually that will stop. Most players do stop developing at some point, but for him, that's not happened yet. So yeah, I think he's a positive asset. In terms of the deal, I was relatively happy because it's part of the Klay Thompson deal, and I was worried we'd have to give a first-round pickup. So like for me, I was relatively happy over the overall deal, but as we spoke about off air, I would have preferred maybe another player in the roster to leave Dallas. So I do like Josh, maybe like Maxi Kleber or someone like that. But yeah, I think in terms of the trade, it's a fair deal if you look at the overall, you know, 3-team element rather than just the Mavs and Hornets part of it.
Yeah, and we're yet to find out what second-round pick. So maybe by the time you listen to this, we might be able to. But we're yet to find out what second-round picks the Hornets were sent and actually where they're going. There's reports that one can end up in Golden State. They could both end up in Dallas. But, I mean, the Mavericks and Hornets have been big trade partners, right? Both at the deadline and then again here. The Hornets were rumored to be interested in Josh Green at the deadline and didn't quite get it over the line, but still managed to get Grant Williams. I guess, what sort of role do you see Josh Green playing? What are his strengths? What do you think he can add to this Hornets roster from the start?
Yeah, I think he'll be a big minute contributor, to be honest. Obviously, you'll know way more about your roster than me, but I don't know if he's going to start or not. But I think you're talking a 20-minute player at a minimum for me on any team in the NBA. Like even on the Mavs, he averaged that, and obviously the Mavs did quite well in the tough Western Conference. But yeah, whether he'll start or come off the bench as like a 6-man type role, we'll see. But I do expect him. I'd be surprised if he's not a 20-minute a game player. Obviously, I know you guys have got young players you want to kind of blood in, so it depends who impresses the new coaching staff. But for me, I'd be surprised if he was less than 20 minutes a game. I just think what he's shown so far in the NBA, even in the NBA postseason, I think he's worth that for you guys. I think he fits the way that, you know, especially the main man in LaMelo Ball wants to play. I think Josh Green pairs pretty well with him in terms of size and the speed that you guys want to kind of attack at. So, yeah, I think he'd be 20 minutes a game. I'd like to see him start just because I like him as a person and as a player, but we'll see when you guys kind of flesh out the roster after free agency, if he's going to be that 6th, 7th man or if he's going to be the 2 guard in your team.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's got every chance to start. I think right now it's probably between him and Cody Martin, or there is some world where, you know, Brandon Miller plays the 2, and in that case, then maybe they play really big, but we're starting Grant Williams and maybe Miles Bridges. That might have been resolved by the time you listen to this. So there's that world as well. But I think he's got a really good chance. I'm going to tell you what I really know about him from my limited watching him during the finals, during the playoffs, and tell me what I'm wrong. And what I see is a high effort kind of point of attack defender. Lot likes to get out to run in transition. finishes around the rim, athletic finisher. Not necessarily a great ball handler or great passer, apart from maybe in transition a little bit, and then can kind of shoot 3-point shots when they're kind of wide open. And obviously in Dallas, he got a lot of open threes, thanks to Luka Doncic, thanks to Kyrie Irving. Like, I'm just assuming that any 3-point shooters percentage is just going to go down when they come to Charlotte out of that Dallas system, because Luka just finds you so easily. It's hard to replicate that even for a playmaker like LaMelo Ball. But that's kind of what I see. Someone who'll get out and run in transition. He will spot up from beyond the arc, and he'll play good, tough defense. Am I selling him short with that assessment?
No, I think you're about right. I think the highlight is on the break. I think he's probably better, than people don't watch him every week than they actually think he is. I think on the break, he's a very good passer. He struggles in general on offense when he has too many decisions to make. Now, I obviously love Luka Doncic, but there's an element that he's not getting too many half-court touches. So in terms of his kind of live dribble and passing not on the break, there's an argument that some of that is because he just doesn't do it a lot. So when you get to do it, you're kind of in that panic mode where you're like, right, let's find Luka or Kyrie as soon as I can and then get off the ball. In your team, that might not be different. They might be different. They might encourage him to have the ball a little bit more, and he can kind of hone on some of those skills, because on the break, when he's got maybe 1v1 or 2v1 or 3v2, he makes good decisions all the time because he doesn't have to think about, right, where's Luka, where's Kyrie, let's reset the offense, get it to our best players. He just thinks, what's the best pass? And he often makes the best pass. So I think half-court wise, you're probably selling him bang on. I think that's the type of player he is. Corner threes are the best. Kind of above the break, you're not going to see him take or hit an above the break three very often.
Okay.
Yeah, that's something he can improve on as a player. But those corner threes, sometimes those wing threes in transitions where you're kind of doing like a skip pass, he's very good at hitting those. He's gotten better and better as the seasons have gone on. We'll talk a little bit more about stats and stuff because people can Google them. But postseason wise, he often improves as well. First year was terrible, but like this year he shot 39% from three in the postseason, and that has been a regular occurrence at the bigger games. As the season goes on, like I said earlier about him learning and developing, he gets better and better, which I think would be a good sign if I was a Hornets fan. And then in terms of defense, yeah, it's high effort, it's high motor, very good at getting deflections, very good at getting the odd steal. Now, his stats aren't as good as probably I think he is with the eye test at doing that. But again, in the postseason, those numbers have tended to go up across the 3 years. So, yeah, he's a good player on defense. His issue is that you'll have to calm him down on he's too committed on defense. He'll kind of attack a screen too early and get called for a silly foul. Or maybe he'll commit too early and get blown by for a dunk or for a layup from someone that he's trying to contest a three for. Now, the Mavs wanted to do that. They didn't want people to take threes, but you could see how he does it. It was very much kind of over-aggressive for defense. So that's one thing he could probably clean up a little bit. But he's a pretty good rebounder on the defensive end for his size as well. So I think overall, yeah, you've got a good defender. He's good at guarding ones and twos. I would not want him to guard, those wings. The Mavs got in trouble with that, putting him guarding threes when Grant Williams was on the roster, and that didn't work at all. So I think if he's going to guard your kind of point of attack for smaller point guards, not like a Luka or like someone like the LaMelo size, for example, that wouldn't work. But against smaller guys, I think on defense, he does a good job. So yeah, that would be kind of my overall scouting view of Josh Green. But I would try and harp on, especially you guys being such a young team, of how he has gotten better throughout seasons. He had a bit of a dip 2 years ago with an injury, but aside from that, there's just been constant kind of improvement from him, especially shooting. So I think that would be a good thing for you guys.
And what about off the court with him? Like in terms of, is he? I mean, obviously none of us know these players, but when a guy's been on your roster for 3 or 4 years, you can see how other people speak about them. You can see how they interact with the media. You get an insight into their personality. What if you were to kind of describe him off the court to, someone that's never seen or heard from Josh Green before? What type of person do you think the Hornets are getting here?
Yeah, I think he came into the league quite quiet, and he's definitely developed into a bit of a quiet leader when he's with the Mavericks. His time on the Australian basketball team last summer really, really helped. He become a bit of a leader for that group as well. So I think he's gotten better. He's a very, very good teammate. Everyone in Dallas loves him. Like all the players love him. whether you think he's hard teammate to please or not. But Luka Doncic has always loved Josh Green. They've had a really good relationship. He enjoys playing with him and how much effort he puts in. And Jason Kidd, who, is really a defense kind of first head coach. He loves how much effort and kind of work rate that Josh Green puts in. So, he's a good teammate. He worked extremely hard. He is now developing into that bit of a quiet leader. He's more of a kind of lead, follow him type of leader because he does put so much effort into all aspects of the game. He's not going to be that vocal. But one thing he's always been good at is he's really good at sticking up for his teammates. I know that's kind of like no one's really going to fight on an NBA court in general, but everyone likes to see you kind of stick up for each other in terms of a team, especially for a long season. And Josh Green's really good at that. So, I'd say he started, he struggled, came out of his shell a little bit, and now he's definitely developed into a bit of a quiet leader. But every single person in Dallas absolutely loves him. And I don't think it would have been their first choice to get rid of him at the deadline, but it was just the only player, salary-wise, that they could make it work with, unfortunately. I think he'll be a good addition to a young team as well with that playoff experience that he's got, been to the Western Conference Finals once, obviously, and then the NBA Finals once as well. Yeah,
and you mentioned about playing for Australia. I think he's due to do that again this summer, I believe, at the Olympics. We know, especially in this country in England, Australians have a little bit of extra kind of, I don't know, grit, nasty to them. Do you kind of see that come through with Josh Green at times in terms of like how he plays with that? You talk about like high effort. Does that kind of sometimes spill out in a positive way, right? Like being, like you said, someone who sticks up for teammates. That makes me think of like classic Aussie approach every time.
Yeah, he's classic Aussie in terms of that. Even like I said earlier with the screen. So getting over a screen, even if sometimes maybe called for a foul, but he's letting that person know, like very famous examples of him doing it with Rudy Gobert. He's letting that person know he's not just going to die on a screen. He's going to kind of run through you if he has to. He's very good at setting that tone. Like I said, he just needs to calm down a little bit, but that will come with experience. But he's got that grit. He's famous in Dallas for diving on loose balls. And he'll do that with you guys. That's what he does on the defensive end, stopping balls going out. Now, again, it's just honing that in. He's the typical when you're, 10 years old, and they tell you if the ball's going out and you can't see who's behind you, don't throw it back in. Josh Green will just dive into the first row, throw it behind you, and sometimes it will go to you and you'll be on the break. Sometimes it will go to the other team and they'll lay it up. And that's just who he is. He's just very, very aggressive and hardworking. So, he's got that bit of Aussie grit that you described it as, for sure. And from my understanding, when I was looking yesterday, he might start for the Australian team this year, as he didn't do that before. So I'd be interested to see if he takes another step forward, obviously in FIBA, different rules, different three-point line. But if he can kind of develop some of that shooting and maybe drive him to the rim a bit more in the half court, then that'll probably be a good sign for his NBA journey. But he was a much better player after the last summer with Australia. So I think he'll probably do the same with you guys again.
And you talk about some of those little weaknesses like in the half court. Okay, like maybe you said he won't really shoot above the break threes. Like maybe struggles to kind of like get to the rim and score in the half court. Is the struggle there getting to the rim in the half court, or is it finishing? What are the kind of main weaknesses? You talked a little bit about over-eagerness, fouling. What are some of the main offensive shortcomings that you can see?
I think some of it is decision making. He came into the team very not confident at all. He would have wide open corner threes, miss the first one, and then not want to take the next 3 or 4. That's gotten better, and I think that's why his shooting percentages have gotten better. But there's still work to do on that point. It's like, okay, he's made a bad decision. Maybe he's took a 3 he shouldn't have. It's contested. He's missed it. Like maybe he's bricked it. It's just getting over the hump of having that one bad 3. Remembering next time down, right? That last shot didn't matter. I'd say that's the next part of his game, and then his form has gotten better from 3-point. In terms of the other area, I think it is just decision making. Like, there's a prime example, NBA Finals. The only player that got back in transition was Kristaps Porzingis. He's the one player I wouldn't then go and attack on the half court for a dunk. And Josh Green did it twice in a row, got blocked twice in a row. That's the part he struggles at. Now, he was the only player there, and he just said, right, I'm just going to go for it, because that's his aggressive mentality that I keep talking about. But the clever decision there is to kind of pull the ball back, see if someone comes up from maybe above the break or wing 3, and then you can hit that shot. So I would just say decision-making and confidence are the 2 things for him. Now, he'll probably get more shots with you guys than he did with us. But again, like you said earlier, they might not be wide open. So he just needs that confidence to take less wide open 3s. So, I would say decision-making. And then, just keep shooting when he has those bad spells, because he is a bit of a streaky shooter. You'll see he'll have a game where he'll hit 5 corner 3s in a row. Next game, he'll miss first 3. And then you'll be like, oh, Josh Green hasn't shot since. He's just been driving to the rim or driving and kicking. And that's just a confidence thing. So for him, I think it's more of a mental game than it is a physical game. He's got all the tools, apart from probably the height that you want in a two guard. So yeah, I think it's more mental for Josh.
Yeah, I mean, the thing this Hornets roster have been lacking for years, and we've been talking about this on this podcast for years, is toughness, physicality, competitiveness. Like, so it's too often like teams, Detroit are the perfect example. Detroit have been awful for 2 straight years. They've bullied the Hornets like every time we've played them, and they've lost a bunch of games to Detroit, who are a terrible basketball team. And it wasn't that the Pistons were more skilled. It was just that they imposed their will on the Hornets. And like, even when you look at LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller, as good of players as they are, and even Mark Williams to an extent, they're talented, skilled players. They're not players that when you get into a physical tough battle, they're going to necessarily like pull you through. And you need those guys around them to kind of complement that. And I think from everything you described, I mean, that's why we talked in this podcast about Najee Marshall was a guy, DeAnthony Melton was a guy who we talked about as an option this free agency. It's why people were so high, I think, on Stephon Castle in the draft, was because they needed this kind of tough guy who can guard primary offensive initiators, which isn't LaMelo Ball or Brandon Miller. So everything you've described, I think, kind of matches why I think people are excited about this trade. I think for me overall, I'm really interested to see how it works. I think he's exactly what this roster needs. I do get a little worried about just the lack of production, like per minute production across probably like all statistical categories. But I think sometimes he's a bit of a guy that you can, if he's not able to jump on a loose ball, like he's kind of quite passive, like you talked about. But like that could just be the system in Dallas, where, like you said, there's a lot of other guys taking a lot of shots. And he got pretty consistent minutes throughout the playoffs, like in most games. He was getting between 15 to 22 minutes per night, playing in like the most high leverage basketball. So I think it makes perfect sense. Rather than trying to sign someone on the mid-level, you can get someone for 3 years locked up. Now we yet to see what those second-round picks are. Are they going to be closer to 31 or 59, right? We just don't know yet. And I think that's going to go some way before we can really understand the value of the trade. But either way, I completely understand using your cap space in this way, using your flexibility to kind of, and it's obviously someone they targeted already, right? At the deadline, they're wanting to bring it forward. They went after him again in the summer. And like, if Clay had picked the Lakers, not the Mavericks, I wonder, like, this deal probably doesn't get done, right? And I'd love to know what the pivot was. What was the plan B for the Hornets? It feels like this was plan A, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. From everything I read from a Dallas perspective, this was definitely Hornets plan A. They tried at the deadline. They tried before the deadline last year when the Grant Williams stuff wasn't going well and the Mavs needed to get more size on the wing. So it feels like this is the third time that you guys have almost tried to get Josh. So I'll be interested to know how interested you were in the draft process with him. But yeah, in terms of you guys, it's definitely been plan A. And I think the Mavs only did it A because it was the only way to get it done. Like we spoke about off air, I think people wanted Maxi Kleber with his kind of drop off and shooting. And then B, they'd already got Quentin Grimes the week before. And yeah, if you told me another player that's very similar to Josh Green, it probably is Quentin Grimes. So I don't think you want 2 players on the roster that do the exact same thing and probably have the same shortfalls. So I just think it was the only way for the Mavs to get off Hardaway. Unfortunately, have to keep Maxi. They had to give up Josh. So yeah, for you guys, I think it's a really positive move. He fits a young team because you're going to play fast. The Mavs played. It's no surprise that his improvement came the year the Mavs played faster. They went from like 29 in pace to 10th in pace. If you guys with LaMelo Ball, hopefully he stays healthy this year, play fast, Josh Green's perfect for that. It's just, can you guys kind of fine tune him in the half court, which will just take repetitions, I think, for a player like Josh Green.
They're going to play fast. I mean, it's already been really clear. I mean, every single new coaching staff does say we're going to play faster. Like I will say, like that's a classic NBA annual training camp thing. But just the way that they've built the roster with drafting of Tijon Solon, the way that they've talked about like Melo Ball's strengths and Brandon Miller's strengths, like both of them are much better in transition than they are in the half court. This roster is built to do that. I think adding Josh Green just further adds to that strength as well. So no, I completely agree. But unless you got any other thoughts, I think we'll get out of here. A quick one before you get out. If you could go back in time, how did you feel about the PJ Washington trade when it happened? and how do you feel about it now in under a minute?
I feel good about it when it happened. We spoke about it on Twitter, me and you. I feel great about it now. So I felt good about it because I didn't like Grant Williams. I feel great about it because PJ was really good in the playoffs, and they're now kind of helping him fix his jump shot, which is the final thing. So yeah, I feel great about it. But it's probably good for you guys as well because his defensive effort wasn't great towards the end, whereas now he looks like a different player, and that's just a new location, I think, for him. So yeah, I'd say win-win for both teams. I don't know how you feel, but yeah, I'm happy with it.
I agree. I think absolute win-win for both teams. I think just to get the first round pick with Grant Williams as well. I mean, and I don't know if that first round pick, I can't remember if it's 2027 or 2028 off the top of my head. I'm not got it in front of me. I don't know if that first round pick gained value or lost value with this Dallas run, with the signing of Klay Thompson. In some ways, that makes me think it's a higher ceiling because the Mavericks are really kind of got a taste and pushing all in right now, the next 1, 2, 3 years. And then in 3 years or so time, when Klay Thompson's declining and other things are happening, you've traded out, say, Klay Thompson for Josh Green, which in 3 years probably isn't going to look good, but looks great right now. So I'm interested to see how that plays out. I'm now invested in Dallas's failure, which is a bad thing for you, but it's always fun to kind of have a team to root against in just the general day-to-day NBA.
Yeah, I think it's 2027. So, yeah, I'd say, let's have a good year this year. Root for our success, and then you can root for
you can win the championship next year. That's fine. I'm cheering for you. And then after that, let's break it up.
You want Luka to Miami, trade to drop in about 18 months, 2 years. That's what you want. But 2027. So, both teams win, and I do think you can flip Grant for another asset in the future as well, as someone who doesn't love him as a player. So I think you can get another first round pick in the future if he doesn't fit your timeline. So win-win, like we said, for both franchises for sure.
Yeah. All right, Liam. Well, thank you for jumping on here, giving us your insight on Josh Green. We really appreciate it, and we'll catch you for the third installment of the Dallas Hornets trade, whatever that might be.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.